welcome to the No Hair, All Heart podcast. I am your bald host, Zero Hair, Mookie Spitz, and I'm effervescing with some heart when I reminisce about the origins of my nickname. My birth name is Michael George Spitz. The George comes from my sister Ava, who was 16 at the time I was born, liked the name George and wanted me to be George Spitz. Apparently, my parents were not having it. There was a family friend named George who was a childhood friend of my father's going all the way back to Budapest. And they were like, no way, Jose, having freshly emigrated from Caracas, Venezuela, a George Spitz as their first and only American offspring would not fly. Miklos was the name of my father's grandfather in Hungary, which more or less gets transliterated to Michael, Miklos Michael, so I became Michael Spitz. But as a hat tip to my sister, I am Michael George Spitz. That's my name. That's on my birth certificate. But I call myself Mookie Spitz, especially creatively. That's my pen name. That's my blog name. That's my podcast name. That's my name with friends, with family. I am either Mookie to everyone who knows me informally, or Spitz for colleagues and most kinds of professional relationships. I'm just that last name kind of guy. So everyone knows me as Mookie Spitz, either Mookie or Spitz. And I don't know anyone who calls me Michael. So there you have it. So I am asked all the time, what's up with this Mookie stuff? So I wrote a couple blog posts, and now I'm doing a solo podcast talking about knowing thyself and thy name, the origin of Mookie, but most significantly, how it has influenced my sense of self. There's a story behind the name. There's a name behind my many stories, especially as I get older and come to appreciate where I came from, where I am, and where I think I'm headed as Mookie Spitz. People often ask me the origin of Mookie, a nickname with cross-cultural echoes from baseball players Mookie Blaylock and Mookie Wilson, to Mookie from Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, to the scene in Scorsese's Mean Streets, I think his first major film, great film, where young Al Pacino's character goes apeshit in a pool hall after somebody calls him a mook. My moniker actually comes from the Hungarian Mookie, M-U-K-I. Hungarian is a very phonetic language. You could learn how to read it and write it in 10 minutes. Not that you would understand it. But anyway, M-U-K-I, Mookie, a name given to dogs, usually the sheep herding breed known as Pulis, P-U-L-I, Puli, Mookie. The breed is shaggy and rambunctious, having nonstop energy and endless yapping. Their behavior is appropriate and even necessary for their duties on the farm, but can become a nuisance around the dining room table. Yip, yip, yip. Woof, woof, woof. As a toddler, I must have already displayed similar behavioral characteristics. My father Laszlo christening me Mookie to essentially peg me as a small, loud, and annoying little beast. Given his taciturn nature and zero tolerance or ability for any meaningful communication whatsoever, the name made sense, and it stuck. Our character is indeed our destiny. Fast forward, and the nickname has carried through into adulthood. Mookie since transformed into the Americanized Mookie, Mookie. The sentiment reinforced after all these years. The actual origin of that transference is also a story unto itself. This goes back to my early 20s. I'm dating a lovely, shy Irish Catholic woman whom I met in a bookstore working post college in Evanston, Illinois. It was a basement bookseller. Brandeis Books, I think it was called. I don't even really remember. It was replete with an autocratic sales manager who was mean as the stakes down in that basement bookseller were low. And Elizabeth was as lovely as lovely can be. I got fired for being brash and a loudmouth. And as I was heading out the door, Elizabeth asked me for my number. Apparently, she thought I was cute. She seemed to like me. I had a chance. We went on a date. That chance turned into what became at least a year-long relationship, which at that point in my early 20s, in our early 20s, was considerable. And she is why Mookie transferred. She was over at my little studio apartment in Edgewater on Chicago's near north side. And I had one of those ancient, although at the time fairly contemporary, answering machines, which consisted of a cassette tape recorder that was activated by the landline phone that triggered it after a set number of rings, and then it would play a recorded greeting. Hello, you have reached Michael Spitz. Leave your name and number, followed by a beep, and then the cassette tape would record whomever wanted to leave a message. You would come home from wherever you were. There'd be a little flashing red light on the answering machine. And then you would hit play, and the tape would automatically rewind to the point of unlistened messages and play back whomever left a message for you. So this happened one afternoon. I'm coming back to the apartment with Elizabeth. The red light is blinking. I listen to the message, and it's from my father, Laszlo. And in his heavily Hungarian accented Bela Lugosi voice, says, "Hello, Mookie?" And Liz smiles, big beaming, Irish, freckled smile. "Mookie? I didn't know he called you Mookie." And then I explained the story of the dogs and my dad. And from that moment on, Liz called me Mookie. And then it stuck from there. So thank you, Liz. Thank you, Dad. A name loaded with irony for both of them, but in vastly different ways. So, anyway, as I was mentioning, Mookie, M-U-K-I, for my dad, has since transformed into the Americanized M-O-O-K-I-E. And that's been reinforced over all these years by friends and family and everyone who knows me as Mookie, including you. Thanks for listening. Anyway, I've been a compulsive oversharer since birth, and I enthusiastically personify my father's endearing insult to stake my own claim. Let me tell you what that means for me. Like the Who people in Dr. Seuss's Whoville from Horton Hears the Who. You might have read the book. You probably saw the animated show on TV. Quite excellent overall. Just like a Who in Whoville, I clamor to be heard, yearn to be understood. Everything that I do or have done, and especially as I'm doing now with all these podcasts, with my blogs, with my ranting, my video rants on TikTok, which I share on Instagram and YouTube and Substack and now on Patreon. I am here. I am here. Every post I make, I'm like a Who from Whoville, broadcasting that I exist. Pay attention to me. Cut through the noise, the clutter. I am small, tiny compared to the world. I'm just one voice, no matter how much I rant or rave or blog or podcast. It's but a dent. A dent. It's a molecule in the ocean of all the content that's streaming. But I do it, and I do it with gusto. I am here, which has become my daily mantra as I emotionally compensate. Here's the thing, for growing up in a household of shut the fuck up and screams. An unhappy home, I have to say, where my existence was never acknowledged or validated. I just existed. For me, silence equals death, a return to muzzled dreams. So growing up, I couldn't really speak to anybody because my parents didn't speak to each other or speak to me. And I reveled and flourished in a world of my own imagination. But that can only last so long, and the silence builds up like a creeping, creaking dam. Nature abhorring a vacuum. Mookie abhorring silence and enjoying quite the opposite. So if you've ever wondered why my life seems to be an open book, why I'm a social media Descartes, I post, therefore I am, I podcast, therefore I am, I blog and rant and write books, therefore I am, and why I take such satisfaction in annoying all of you, and whether I edify and entertain is, in a sense, extra points, extra joy for you, extra joy for me. I just like to make my presence felt because the explanation is simple. Little Mookie needs to bark and yap at everyone's toes to feel heard and valued because it's a hedge against childhood traumas, laughter that happened in the dark. And if you've ever wondered, conversely, what triggers me, it's not differing opinions or even insults. I've gotten this a lot, that I can't handle criticism, that the moment anyone disagrees or punches back or hurls ad hominem attacks, then I run or disengage. I really don't think that's true. It's quite the opposite. It's any hint of being muzzled, of being told to shut the fuck up, of being told to be quiet. The insults that have hurt in the past are those that implore me to shut down, be quiet, that deny my validity in terms of someone who needs to speak. Because to be silenced is to be invalidated, is to send me back to my room, is to deny my existence, deny that it even matters. My father named me Mookie, and like any super or anti hero, I refuse to let my creator control or destroy me. So I guess you can call me the Frankenbook. I don't want to be quiet. And whether or not you listen, whether or not anyone listens, that's secondary to just the opportunity to share and to learn and to engage, at the very least, with my own thoughts and my own feelings, because I post, I podcast, I write, therefore I am. What's your nickname? Have you thought about it? I know people who don't have a nickname, and that's a kind of nickname too. And if you have one, how has it influenced your life? And what does it say about you, how you've lived, and what you aspire to still become? And to what extent has that nickname defined you? And how have you defined it? And what kind of story can you tell me or yourself about your nickname? Who gave it to you? Where it's from? Is it your true self, or is it a mirror of someone that someone else insisted you be? As an aside, I could go into my last name just a little bit, which is Spitz. Now, Spitz is very German, and I am Jewish. I did a 23andMe and was very disappointed because I thought I was genetically way more interesting than it proves that I am. I am apparently 97.2% Ashkenazi Jewish, Eastern European Jewish. This gets complicated because people say Judaism is a religion and Jews are an ethnicity. Some would say a race. And that, because of our history, especially our Eastern European history, gets very complicated and very messy very fast. But I'm not going to talk about race and ethnicity and religion. I'm merely going to point out that tests like this apparently are able to pinpoint my background, and they have done so in a way where 97.2% of my gene pool is associated with this group of people in that area of the world. Okay. What's as interesting in ways is the last name's origin being German. So if you hear the name Spitz and it's a Spitz in Germany, like the Spitzes of Frankfurt or the Spitzes of Köln or the Spitzes of Berlin, then they are most likely not Jewish. But if you hear a Spitz, any kind of Spitz, and they're not of direct German descent, they're not German emigres fairly recently, then you can bet that they're Jewish. And the tacit assumption is that the Jewish Spitzes were kicked out of Germany during any one of a number of different kick the Jews out phases. So I believe King Leopold, I read this a while ago. I'm not quite sure. I should check before I speak, but I like to speak, remember? King Leopold of Germany apparently kicked out the Jews in the mid 16th century. So who knows? Maybe I was part of the Jews kicked out of Germany in the 1500s, but that's my father's line of the family. And I'm not going to tell you my mother's so you don't access my credit card information. But I'll go into that some other time. Anyway, the father's side of the family is the Spitzes, Hungarian Jews, maybe traced to Germany, and And the origin of Spitz in German, though, is its own interesting thing. So literally, Spitz in German is a point or a tip. It's kind of onomatopoeic. Spitz, Spitz. It's a one-syllable, sharp, phonetic, kind of onomatopoeic utterance, right? Spitz, Spitz, tip, point. So in Deutschland, a ballpoint pen is a Spitzblume. It's got a tip, a point. It's a ballpoint pen, a Spitzblume. And the city at the top of the world is Spitzbergen, the berg at the top. And a popular cheer at football games is Das ist Spitze, suggesting that one's team is at the top of their game. I was actually in Germany many years ago at a game. I did not know this. So I am sitting in the bleachers at a game in Germany, and all of a sudden the crowd jumps up, all several thousand of them in sync, and they scream, Das ist Spitze. And I was kind of freaked out. It was one of those moments where, did I die? And this is what happens when you die in a stadium full of people. They see you off. But it literally means awesome or great. That is the top, the peak. And in a self-referential kind of way, a nickname is a Spitzname. Now, for a while, I didn't know really why that would be the case, but that's pretty obvious too, where a nickname is usually a shortened name, and that gets to the point faster now, doesn't it? Or it's the tip of a name. It's like the edge of a name. And that segues into the breed of dogs called the Spitz dog. You've probably seen Spitz dogs. Spitz dogs are all fluffy, and they're very cute. And you guessed it, they have a very pointy nose. So tip or point, they're a pointy nose dog. They're a Spitz. Spitzhund, a Spitz dog. So there you have it. That's Mookie, as in the dog who ran around annoying people and wouldn't shut up, translating into the adult who doesn't want to shut up and won't shut up. And the Spitz, which is a tip or point, Jewish, but originally probably German and probably kicked out of the country, German Jew, but Hungarian, mixed with obviously all sorts of maternal genes dominating my mitochondria. So there you have the name itself. And I wrote another blog post about another famous Spitz, namely Mark Spitz. And I think it crosses over, speaking of genes, in a relevant and interesting way. And I'd like to share it with you as well on this pod. And this one is called Mark Spitz Messed Up Mookie Spitz. Lessons learned when rebuke instantly flipped to praise. This is kind of fun. So throughout elementary school, I was the tallest in class, an advantage utterly destroyed by my chubby dorkiness and inability to keep my mouth shut. Woohoo! Surprise, surprise. Wearing bottle-bottom horn-rimmed glasses didn't help matters, nor did my ill-fitting clothes, greasy, unkempt hair, and cluelessly disheveled appearance. My life was lived between the fridge and the TV, and that's no exaggeration. Remember, my parents didn't talk to me, and when they talked, they yelled at each other and at me, and that was it. I go into this in other pods and blogs, and I will cover it in a novel. But if you can imagine a household where the mother and the father never spoke to each other and never spoke to their only child. And it sounds crazy and like I'm exaggerating, but you could bring in my sister as a character witness who visited summers sometimes from Venezuela. And you could ask any of my childhood friends about my creepy parents, and they will corroborate this eyewitness testimony. Anyway, for the point of this narrative, suffice to say that I looked and acted and sounded a lot like Eric Cartman from South Park. I was kind of fat and I had glasses and I made up stories. I would see a movie on TV, like let's say of an air traffic incident, like those disaster films of the 70s. And then they would show the cockpit with all the dials and the captain doing evasive action. And then after I saw this movie the next day at school and out in the playground, I would tell everyone that I met that I knew how to fly airplanes. And I would do this as just, a kind of non sequitur. I would just be on the playground and I would just bring it up. And it wasn't even, oh, by the way, I would just tell people that I knew how to fly planes. And I would do that with just about everything. So any kind of input that I got, I used to love the PBS public television show Nova, which still persists despite the Doge. Let's see how long it lasts. But Nova used to be one of my favorite shows, and I'd see a show on mathematics or science or planetary exploration, and then I would be an instant expert. Now, if you know me and you're listening, you're probably laughing your ass off because I do exactly the same shit now. I'm more well read, and people would say that I am intelligent and I have strong points of view and I'm able to articulate myself. I like that expression, articulate myself. But I do the same thing. I tacitly assume that a cursory scan of any subject, no matter how nuanced or complicated, and I get it. I'm an expert. Look no further. Just ask me all about it. This actually helps me immeasurably in fiction writing. By tacitly assuming that I know what the fuck I'm talking about, I come across with conviction in my prose. I am about to publish my second novel. I'm very, very proud of it. It's a labor of love, and it covers an awful lot of ground in, I think, a compelling, fresh way that conveys deep knowledge of some deep subjects, everything from quantum mechanics to relativity theory, the crisis in fundamental physics. I talk about history and politics, sociology, psychology, and philosophy. I toss ideas around, I contextualize them, I seamlessly integrate them into the narrative as if the very depth of these subjects were second nature to me. And as I'm mentioning now, it's Eric Cartman, bigger, faster, longer, and cut. And I revel in this. I think that this is cool. And it's taken me a long time to understand and accept who I am and embrace it. This is not only me, but I think it's cool. It's a skill. It's easy to dismiss the stuff that we're good at, especially the stuff that we're great at, because we tacitly assume that it's no big deal because it might come naturally. It might be something that we adore doing, so we don't consider it work. And since it's not work, it's not a heavy lift. And since it's not a heavy lift, then what's the big deal? when these are our most precious gems that other people don't have, sometimes don't even fathom. And it's easy and tempting to take that stuff for granted. And if I could rewind the clock, if I have any air quote regrets, it's not taking my strengths more seriously earlier on than I did. I just kind of glossed over them or dismissed them. And now I swim in them, and it's awesome. So, anyway, that was a minor digression. Allow me to proceed. So, anyway, looking and acting like an elongated Eric Cartman from South Park didn't do much for my third grade reputation. So, I was fat, but I wasn't as obese. I didn't quite talk like that, but I think it was probably close. Anyway, nor did any of that salve my already decimated ego. So I was frail, as frail, maybe even more frail than Eric, who had his bigotry and contempt on his sleeves to act as yet another layer between him and his own vulnerability. But anyway, I was sensitive. I was raw. And being a fat, half-blind geek was bad enough, but the coup de grace was my last name. See, I'm coming around, which triggered an onslaught of teasing, bullying, and name calling, and tsunamis of pantomimed and often real saliva. So let me describe what I lived through. Look, everybody, the cutest girl in school, and obviously the one I had a crush on, would shout, part of our classroom's almost daily ritual. It's Michael, making the sound of hacking up an enormous loogie, immediately followed by the sound of spewing it out. Chewy! Punctuated by a chorus of laughter and cheers all around. Spitz. So how it sounded to me was this. Hey, everybody. Look, everybody. It's Michael Spitz. I was utterly mortified each and every time she did it. Like it was the first time happening, which it wasn't, because it literally happened every day. Hey, Michael Spitz. Kids were, are, and still will forever be so cruel. That's our nature. Dr. Seuss, by the way, was asked if he loved all children because he wrote those lovely books for children. And he said, no, children are like adults. They're good ones, bad ones, ones you just hate, ones you put up with. I don't know if that got Dr. Creds with his publisher. Not the best PR for Dr. Seuss, but you got to give him points for being honest. Anyway, looking back, my endurance was impressive, perhaps bolstered by the harsh but consequential reality that some attention was better than no attention. At the time, the very best that I could do. The 1972 Munich Olympics was around this time. And it would be remembered for two major events: the headline grabbing massacre of 11 Israeli coaches and athletes by Palestinians, and the record breaking winning of 7 gold medals by Mark Spitz, the swimmer. That juxtaposition of agony and ecstasy crossed our broadcast TV screens, confusing and enticing all of us, and especially me, for years. About the only thing Mookie Spitz had in common with Mark Spitz was our last name, and both our fathers being Hungarian Jews. Small world. Chances were high that we were, in fact, somehow related. But this was well before 23andMe and Ancestry.com and all the genetic testing services for proof justifying an exploratory phone call or Twitter, DMing the guy, saying hi. You couldn't really reach out to a celebrity back then. You could write a letter, try to contact their agent. It was such a different time. It made such a big difference. Another tangent here is the Laszlo Letters, which was a satirical book put out by this guy Laszlo, and he wrote typewritten letters to the CEOs of major corporations like Exxon, Searle, politicians like Henry Kissinger. And they or their office would write him back. And the Laszlo Letters, look it up, was basically a book of his letter written as if he were a third grader or an adult on a third grade level, gushing with sycophantic ass kissing or complaining about something trivial, and then receiving a response again through that clunky written medium, and then him posting the book. Absolutely brilliant. He was a precursor for Sacha Baron Cohen and his Ali G. I don't know if you've ever seen Ali G, worth looking that up too, where Sacha Baron Cohen, in the guise of an English hip hop rapper superstar, in that guise, interviewing the likes of John Schlesinger and one famous person after another, and asking them stupid, embarrassing questions to see how they would respond to an ostensibly stupid, embarrassing person, again, through the lens of satire, exactly like the Laszlo Letters. Anyway, that all said, at the time, 1972, Mark Spitz was a national and international hero. He was huge. No one had ever done what he did. 7 gold medals, backstroke, front stroke, side stroke. I even swam in high school. That's a whole separate story, me holding that name. It's like Wolfgang Van Halen trying to, be original. I had his shadow over me. But Mark Spitz was beyond belief at the time. He literally shattered records. He could outswim everybody. He was like a fish. Michael Phelps annihilated Mark Spitz. He was like the Mark Spitz 2.0, and he's of this or near this generation. And he was even more impressive. But it's kind of like fastballs in baseball getting faster. People improve over time because you're standing on the shoulders of giants, whether you're doing mathematics, physics, or athletics. The bar is always being raised biologically, culturally, in terms of the mechanism of the sport itself. But anyway, at that time, Mark Spitz was ginormous, huge. And Mark Spitz became such a world-renowned celebrity athlete that even Mookie Spitz's classmate bullied student loser status got a boost. It was the tide, the Mark Spitz tide that raised all the Spitz boats. The bar already low, the only place I could go was up. And ascend I did, first incrementally with every world record broken in the pool, and finally, in toto, as Mark stood up there on the winner's day, it's posing with 7 gold ones. My transformation from least likely to succeed to most at flipperoo was instantaneous, confusing, and even to my prepubescent, clueless self, ridiculous. Nothing about me had changed, yet my entire world did a power 180. Peers who made fun of me and literally spit at me the day before were suddenly treating me like I had made sporting history in Munich, like I had won the medals. I mean, it was just my fucking name. Who gives a shit? It's completely random. And as I'm mentioning, there was a probability that we were actually related, but that was not a part of this equation. It wasn't like they were thinking of, oh, he might be my uncle or my great uncle or my third cousin, which actually might be true. It was just my fucking name. The other famous Spitz, albeit with an extra ER, from that fateful same Olympics was Andre Spitzer. Now, you probably don't remember this guy, might never have heard of him, but he was the Israeli coach of the fencing team. And he got murdered in the evacuation helicopter during the botched hostage rescue attempt at the airport. Andre Spitzer, at the time of his death, was only 32, father of a newborn girl, and husband to one of his fencing students who converted to Judaism. His wife strolled with him through the Olympic Village right before the attack, and later told the story about Andre spotting members of the Lebanese team. Okay, so they're husband and wife, Spitzers, Jewish and converted to Judaism, strolling through the Olympic Village before the Israeli athletes were attacked. And Andre spotted members of the Lebanese team and wanted to greet them. Are you crazy? His wife asked. There are two countries then, in 1972, and pretty much now at war, active conflict. And then Andre's response was, that's exactly what the Olympics are all about. Here, I can go to them, and here, I can talk to them. So Andre did. His wife was amazed to see them shake hands with each other, part as friends. You see, beamed Andre, this is what I was dreaming about. I knew it was going to happen. I knew it could happen, and it did. What also happened is Andre, along with 10 of his compatriots, got murdered. Along the way, identities got mistaken, roles reversed, but the players sadly remain the same. Decades after Mark Spitz helped Mookie Spitz get cooler, people old enough to remember would ask me if we weren't, in fact, related. He's Hungarian, I'd say, and I'm Hungarian, so maybe. I wonder if my web feet give me away. Nobody laughed then. None have even bothered to ask since Michael Phelps broke his broken records. But at least since then, I've learned not to care. What's in a name? Everything and nothing. What's in identity? Everything and nothing. What are the boundaries between people? How do we describe ourselves and others? What values do we affix to the tribes we just happen to be born within, the countries we live in, the values we choose to make our own. We do need something, don't we? Nationalism, religion, these deeply emotional and likely instinctive, at least in their energy, feelings that translate into behaviors serve a purpose. But even when I was this small Eric Cartman, little loudmouth motherfucker, I knew deep in my heart that all of it was bullshit. But that doesn't necessarily preclude greatness. If you're going to swim, swim. And if you're going to pursue whatever it is you're going to pursue, you could do it under the veil of a religion, a country, a value system that you just happen to have been born into, or you can choose to do it like Burger King and have it your way. And I'm not sure if that decision is even voluntary. And whether it is or not, I know that I just don't care. The irony being, of course, that in my not caring, in my dismissal of all this, I've put myself in this objectified chess player perspective where I could see the whole board. And as somebody who can't shut up and won't shut up and loves to talk about this and tell stories and write and be an artist, these very contradictions are the good stuff. They're the fuel of art itself. And that, perhaps, is the biggest paradox of them all. That in the very rejection of these ad hoc, tribalistic, awful human tendencies, behaviors, and instincts is the stuff that dreams are made of, and nightmares too. And both are lovely to experience each and every night and day. Thanks for listening. More to come. I am working literally 16, 17 hours a day now to get my second novel out the door. I'm going to have a lot to say about that too, because I just can't and won't be quiet. Thank you for listening to the No Hair All Heart podcast. Like, comment, share. And I'll be sharing again soon.